Hello everyone, Dr. Baldwin here. Today I am going to show you how you can turn your custom jungle biomes from something that looks like this into something that looks like this. Okay, so here we are looking at rainforest and jungle trees today. What you need to do is you gotta really just study them, look at them, figure out how they grow, and how they're supposed to look. You can also find specific species if you know what you're looking for. For example, Brazilian rain trees, something like this. It's a bonsai, but it conveys the basic idea. Something like this. Or maybe an ebony tree. If I can find a good image of one. These trees are really cool because of the way the roots flare. And we'll get to that later. That's not an ebony tree. Suddenly I can't find what I'm looking for. When I'm recording, of course. But it's like that tree that Pumbaa gets stuck under in The Lion King. Or you can have a look at, say, a tamarind tree. This is a good image to look at branch structure, how all that works. But we don't really worry about that unless you're building on a larger scale in Minecraft. And then you can also have a look at like banyan trees or ficus trees. They're the same thing, but they're really cool because they've got all these roots that come down from the branches like this. And if you know what you're looking for, you can look at bonsai, but you do have to be careful because they will show you stuff like this or this, which are not, or this, which are not trees that you'll see in a rainforest. So, just be careful when you're looking at them. Okay, now I'm gonna go over the basic structures of a tree, which you can apply to pretty much every tree that you have to make. But this is, just a introductory into tree shapes and what they do. So, a typical tree will start off with roots that are quite wide and come up. This is an exaggerated version. But it comes up like that. So, kind of a, let's get a different color. Kind of a triangular shape. Right? Then the canopy is typically also a triangle. Usually kind of a rounded triangle, like that. Then, so now we've got this basic look. That's the basic look of all trees. Typically, jungle trees are fairly tall, so they have to compete with other trees in the same canopy, quite dense. So something a bit more. Something a bit more like that, and then they won't typically have branches down here. Unlike this, which would have branches right the way up through the trunk. Because that means that they won't be getting light from the rest of the canopy that's covering them. So, typically it's quite a flat triangle, quite near the top. Like that. Then you've got your branches that go through, of course. some branches coming up from here and here. Now, not all of the jungle trees are, telephone poles. Some trees, especially the banyan trees, can get kind of wiggly, and if you have a banyan tree, of course, you've got all these branches that come up like this, eventually leading to the canopy. And the canopy might look something like that. Then, of course, it's got all these roots coming down from it. But basically, we want to understand how the tree's supposed to look. Then we'll break it down even further. So, we're going to go, say this is the top of the trunk as it comes into the canopy. I'm going to move that. The top of the trunk as it comes into the canopy. And it's going to split off. So, we're going to have branch go that way, branch come that way. There's also going to be other branches coming from down here. And what this inevitably means is, if you have a look close, you'll notice that the canopy isn't made out of just one big mass of leaves like you would see here. It is, in fact, made up of all these different bits of leaves called pads, and they will form kind of a triangle shape. Like that. Maybe there's a branch coming out here, like that. But that gets the basic idea, right? And then, so that's the canopy. Now, the base of the trunk, the roots. When a tree is young, you won't see the roots. It'll just come out of the ground like this. But as trees age, the soil erodes away from the roots, which means that you'll start to see the tree with its root flare. And so sometimes you'll see just a slight bit of definition of where the roots used to be. They've now swelled and joined together to create a big mass that radiates away from the trunk. Okay, so I'm gonna start here with just a standard tree you might see in a rainforest or jungle. Fairly basic, a slight flare, and then it's pretty tall with branches that bend upwards in general. Some of the lower branches you'll see split, and I tried to get a look similar to an older fan or a semicircle. Then I'll just slowly build out pads of either 2 or 3 blocks thick to give it a more rounded look in general. Then always go back out and have a look, see if there's anything you might want to change, add more branches or whatever. Then here I'm moving on to something more like an ebony tree, where we've got the big flared roots that come down, and then it's going to slope up fairly rapidly into a more upright trunk, but again using the same branch structure where it slowly comes towards a vertical leader, main trunk, I guess, and slowly building out the pads. This one I did slightly differently, where the branches are a little bit more vertical, but it doesn't really matter as long as the whole appearance is similar to, again, that fan shape that you would see from one of the more traditional style fans. Like, for example, this one up on screen now. Now, moving on, I'm working on something like a banyan that you might see growing on the side of a cliff. Banyans are, I think they're pretty cool trees. They're very prolific with their roots. As you can see with the aerial roots when we get to them, but they just drop roots when it's hot and humid enough. This tree, I'm having the branches tilt down slightly. That's just a personal style choice that I chose for this one. But most tropical trees will have their branches tilt upwards. Alright, here we've got all the aerial roots going in. You'll notice that as they get further down to the ground, they'll flare out as well, just like a normal trunk would, because that's just generally how they work. And now I'm moving on. Now I'm moving on to the Brazilian rain tree. Now, this one, I will admit that I struggled a little bit with because of the way they grow has a fluting to it, and it's really hard to get that subtle fluting in Minecraft, otherwise it'll just look rounded. This one's also quite a large tree, so you'll see that most of the branches that I've done split off. And this also creates the look of a fuller tree, so it has more of a standalone tree, something that might, take over the space as in, which you can also tell by the size of the trunk of this tree. And, always go back, you want to add in branches if it looks too bare. If you're building in a rainforest, you're not going to be seeing trees that are, really bare where there's canopy. So, you just want to, go back, make sure everything looks right. And on this tree, I would like to highlight the pads, just because there are so many. You'll notice I've kind of built a bit of a domed shape, but it's also fairly random as long as the top is smaller than the bottom of the pad of leaves. You'll also notice I'm coming in back and adding some branches coming off the top of other branches. This is totally fine to do. That's how trees naturally grow. But don't have them coming from the bottom of branches, because there are very few trees, and I can't actually think of one off the top of my head where that actually happens. You might see a few branches, but they'll generally die out because they're growing from the underside of the branch and they're shaded out. And now, here's just another standard umbrella-shaped jungle tree using stripped jungle logs. Just adding in some smaller trees. This one's a smaller banyan, just so you can get kind of an idea of how it all goes together again. This one I did with upwards facing branches, so you can see that you can do it. It does look nice, I think. And again, with the aerial roots, these ones aren't quite as large, so they don't flare out as much. Sometimes the aerial roots have a little bit of sway in them, so I added that on one of them. It doesn't really matter. Then here's just another small ebony tree, just so we, round out that whole look. And I think this one probably had the most umbrella shape out of the trees that I made. And here I'm doing another Brazilian rain tree, just kind of trying to mimic that, fluting again with the fences. It was alright, an interesting tree all in all. And that is how you improve the trees for your jungle biomes. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments, questions, or criticisms, leave them down below, and if you enjoyed, leave a like. Subscribe for more content similar to this. Cheers.